Well, a pleasure to be joined again here on Glenn Clark Radio by a man that we've known for a long time over the years. He is a super agent. His guy, Patrick Mahomes, just won another Super Bowl. He's on top of the world. He is the great Leigh Steinberg, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Leigh, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us.
My pleasure.
Leigh, obviously, contracts are a hot topic here in Baltimore, and we have a lot to get to. But I'm wondering if you could just shed some insight before we get to that about Patrick in particular. There has been so much made over the years about, you can't give a certain percentage of your salary cap to the quarterback and still win a Super Bowl, and it hadn't happened for forever. What makes Patrick so special? Why is it that he has bucked the trend throughout the history of football?
I think it's work ethic and what you see on the surface, which is his superlative play, is just a function of someone who studies hard, works hard, is always in shape, and is hyper competitive. And so the reality is that the most critical position in pro football today is franchise quarterback.
No
and let's
question.
define that as someone that a team can build around for 10 to 12 years, who they can win because of rather than with, and who, importantly, in critical circumstances, the game's getting late and out of hand, throwing a couple interceptions, the crowd's starting to boo. What does the quarterback do at that point? Can he compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, and take a team to and through the playoffs, through the Super Bowl? And the player who can do that, who can elevate their play in critical situations, are invaluable. And Patrick's one of those, and Lamar Jackson is another of those.
Boy, we couldn't agree more about that, Leigh. It gets me to the sense of whatever the percentage is, whatever the damage that it means for what you can't spend for the rest of your cap. I feel like the argument that gets missed in this conversation is what percentage chance do you have if you don't have that type of quarterback on your roster?
Very little, and in the league that are like that. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady just retired, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson. And when you have a player like that, it always gives you a chance to compete for the Super Bowl. If you don't have a player like that, you can spend years looking for one. So here was a situation that you would think if it was a movie, it would fade to black, and a very happy Lamar Jackson and a very happy Baltimore Ravens would walk off together in the sunset. And the subject of a contract for a player like this, generally, you hear nothing about the negotiation, and they're just sitting at a desk announcing a new contract with the GM and the coach. So this one's different. My guess is that Lamar Jackson probably looks at the market and sees the contract that was done for Deshaun Watson, which was $50 million a year, all guaranteed, for skill and injury, and says, well, that's my comparable. And I bet that the Ravens say, that's our quarterback, we're really happy, but that's not that operation. My guess is that that's probably what's happening, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense.
You and I are in agreement about that. Leigh Steinberg is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Leigh, with that said, when you were working on the deal for Patrick Mahomes, it wasn't a fully guaranteed deal. It was a history-making deal, of course. I mean, it was one of the biggest in sheer numbers that we've ever seen, but the priority wasn't fully guaranteed. Can you take me through why that wasn't a priority? And now, having seen it happen, maybe would it be different if you guys were going to the market at this point? Would you be in the same place where you'd say, yeah, I'd be searching for a fully guaranteed deal as well?
I'm going to let Patrick speak for his contract negotiations and what he did, but I'll speak more generally. The key under the cap is to keep the salaries down and keep paying a big signing bonus. So the question is, can you maximally compensate a player? Can you maximally compensate a player while making sure that his goal, which is always most important to the quarterback because they're the chief beneficiary of going to the playoffs, going to the Super Bowl from the standpoint of marketing, from the standpoint of career satisfaction, and you make that can be while still preserving maximum revenue. And that's the challenge that you have as a contract negotiator. And it's possible to have the highest paid player, but have the contract constructed in a way where the team can put a supporting cast around that gets the player to his ultimate goal.
It's more taking it away from being specific to Patrick. The idea of fully guaranteed contracts, we understand why they would behoove a player, of course, in a sport like football. Is there a reason why teams couldn't do it? We know why they don't want to do them, right? Like, we understand that they want that cap flexibility at the back end of a contract. They want to be able to know if something, injury-wise devastating were to occur, they can get out from under it. But again, knowing that you have to have one of these guys in order to have a chance to win, like, how do those two things measure up? It would seem like the value would still be if this is what it takes, specifically at the quarterback position, because I don't, to the point, right? The Chiefs were willing to move on from Tyreek Hill. They knew they needed to have Patrick Mahomes. To the point.
Well, you see, it's it really is unique to that position. It's the only position in pro football that competes dollar for dollar with the bigger contracts you see in the NBA and Major League Baseball. And again, it's because it's so critical. I think the essential question that a franchise has to ask themselves is, if not this quarterback, then who? Because the point is that it could take years to, here you have a player in Jackson who was MVP of the entire league. That's pretty unique. I understand people have raised issues about the fact he was hurt, 10 out of 22 games or some number. But the reality is he did not get hurt hang gliding. He didn't get hurt at Club Med. He didn't get hurt, playing basketball. He got hurt playing with reckless abandon, which is exactly what the team wants.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point that he is doing everything he can to help his team win, and it's all you can ask for from a player. I wholeheartedly agree. Leigh, I know this is a hypothetical, but do you think that if Lamar was on the open market, right, if there was no franchise tag in football, and he were to hit an open market, do you feel like there would be a team that would step in and say, if that's what it takes to get it done, hell yeah. We've got nothing right now. We'd be in a rush to give out a fully guaranteed deal in order to get him.
If Lamar Jackson ever hit the free agent market or ever was available, remember what would happen. There'd be competition between teams.
Yep.
And in that competition, as long as he had two teams competing against each other, you would guess he would get whatever the contract is he wants.
That's the way that I have felt about it. And again, I understand why the Ravens are not in a rush, but I just feel like he has every right to ask for it, because I agree with you. I think someone would be willing to give it to him should he hit the open market. Leigh, we're chatting with Leigh Steinberg here on Glenn Clark Radio. Do you sense any pressure? There's been a lot made with Lamar not having an agent, obviously, about the NFLPA perhaps using Lamar to try to, get him to put his flag down and say, I'm doing fully guaranteed or nothing, to try to change the course of the way that contracts are negotiated with quarterbacks. Do you think that there is a pressure that's being felt by Lamar Jackson on behalf of the entire Players Association here?
I don't think so. I think that he's there are a number of younger franchise-type quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, who are coming up on contracts. Josh Allen there. So they're inevitably this market's going to move. Remember, it's all based on revenue. And in the midst of a cratered economy and a pandemic, somehow CBS and Fox both raised their bids on the TV package by 83%. So, and you have a 1-year cap jump that's up to about $225 million from like 198. So the point is the money's there to pay the next generation of players, and inevitably each contract sets the floor for the next one. So you're going to see that happen. So I don't think it's incumbent on Lamar Jackson to negotiate for the rest of the league. You know, he needs to be focused on doing the contract he wants.
I guess I do want to take a second here. I'm assuming that you don't feel as though the Ravens aren't being fair in this. You know the Ravens. You know their history as an organization. When I ask these questions or give my opinions, I feel like some people think that I'm coming down on the Ravens. Is there any reason for us to think the Ravens aren't being completely fair and trying to do what's best just to negotiate on their side?
So this is a common pattern. First of all, you start with the fact that the Ravens are a quality organization. They've got good ownership. They've got a great front office. They have a great coach. This is a happy marriage, right, with a team that loves a player and a player that loves a team. That's why it's a little bit confusing. But what happens is two groups face the same reality and just see it in slightly a different way. In other words, they see the same facts. And desire's there to continue with the player, and I'm certain this is Lamar Jackson's team in his mind. So everything's set up for a happy ending. There's just not a meeting of the minds on what the relevant comparables are, and that's the way a veteran negotiation goes. You take the player, you take his stats, you take his winning, you take playoffs, you take awards, and you say, who's he equivalent to? So if you're Lamar Jackson, you say, well, my comps are Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and boom, boom, boom. And then the other side argues, well, you haven't gone to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And you go back and forth. But basically, the principle's the same. You cannot win in contemporary football without a franchise quarterback. He's been MVP of the league, and if you take him off the team, it's a very different matter. I'm sure the Ravens are totally appreciative of that. They just have a difference in opinion. That's why you have contract negotiations, and eventually they'll figure this out. Remember, it's neither Lamar nor the Ravens figure to be self-destructive here. They both figure to want the same thing, and eventually they'll work it out.
Is there any point at which it becomes too contentious, Lee? Like, it's something that's been brought up by a few people. Is there a danger that, you start negotiating in the media at some point and things are said? Like, is there any point where you worry it becomes too contentious in order to make it work?
So here's the thing. Agenting lesson 101. Don't negotiate in the papers.
Right.
Don't negotiate publicly. Don't make your arguments publicly. Keep that all behind closed doors. The worst thing we have in contract negotiations, the worst system is arbitration in baseball, because the player has to sit there and listen to the team argue that he's not so great. And so you don't ever need to get to that level. There's agreement that this is a great player. And you have to be very careful not to let third parties get involved. This is between Lamar and the Ravens.
Is that at all more awkward because there's no agent? Like, does that run the risk of this getting uglier with there being no agent involved?
Well, my very first client was Steve Bartkowski, and he was the first pick in the draft. And I said before the negotiation, I said, Steve, look, in the course of negotiation, they're going to make defenses as to why you shouldn't get a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
But you don't really need to hear that. And I said, I can just give you the bottom line and just assume that they're going to have arguments on their side. He said, no, I want to hear everything. I want to hear all the details. It's my life. And I said, that's fair. So he said, what'd they say? Oh, well, you know, you're not real mobile. You've got this flaw and this flaw and this flaw and this flaw. He said, get me traded. So it's a little, which didn't happen, but it's a little difficult. You'd like to have a little bit of a buffer there.
Yes, it would be ideal, I would think, but not the route that he's chosen to go, and hopefully it works out anyway. Leigh Steinberg, there are plenty of people over the years that think, I could do this, right? Like, I could be that. They could make movies about me. I could be Leigh Steinberg. And you are giving people that are interested an opportunity to maybe learn a little bit about how to become an NFL agent, correct?
Well, Glenn, we do agent academies. I've done about 25 of them to try to bring the next generation of sports agents that have been specifically trained, that have ethics and values, and have been trained how to negotiate, how to recruit, how to market and brand, how to do a charitable foundation, how to do damage control. And if you go to steinbergspeaks.com, you can check on the next one coming up in April in Las Vegas, and it'll jumpstart someone's career.
SteinbergSpeaks.com, again, is the website. And is there somebody, like, is there a chance here in a couple months? I don't know who's all in the 2023 Leigh Steinberg draft class. Who might we be trying to get towards Baltimore this year?
You know what? I'll let the younger agents speak for that.
All right. I know you got a huge team.
In the trenches.
I know that you've got a huge team that you work with, Leigh. I certainly understand that. Well, if it works out that there's a Leigh Steinberg client in this draft class, we'll look forward to that. Leigh Steinberg, I always try to tell you this. Your story is incredibly inspiring. We just had Brandon Novak, who's a local pro skateboarder, in telling us about his path to sobriety, and I know your story is amazing and one that should be shared for forever. I continue to congratulate you on that. At Leigh Steinberg on Twitter is how folks can give you a follow. Thank you, as always, for taking some time for us this morning.
My pleasure.